all started when Summer heard an interesting lecture given by her history professor, Dr. Miller. Dr. Miller was discussing the historical uses of biological weapons and was intrigued by the disease known as tularemia. Summer had never heard of such a thing and decided to visit the tularemia specialist, Dr. Klontz, at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. This is what Dr. Klontz had to say.
Good afternoon, Miss Summer. I'm surprised by your interest in tularemia, given that not many people know of this disease. Francisella tularensis, otherwise known as tularemia, or rabbit fever, was first discovered in Tulare County, California, when a number of squirrels were found dying of a plague-like illness. This is a gram-negative cocobacillus found in rabbits, hares, rodents, and arthropods. It can also be spread by ticks, mosquitoes, and deer flies. This disease is also dangerous to humans. Humans can become infected through arthropod bites, handling infected animals, ingestion of contaminated food or water, and or inhalation of contaminated aerosols. Individuals at high risk for contracting the disease are landscapers, hunters, meat handlers, and lab workers. Endemic areas often have large rodent populations and or poor sanitation. Symptoms include headache, fever, chills, fatigue, swollen lymph nodes, and a skin ulcer at the point of contact with the infected animal. Tularemia is most common in the northern hemisphere and is endemic in northern and central Europe. It has also been reported in every state in the U.S. except Hawaii.
Summer's ambitions did not stop there. If this is truly the most contagious bacteria known to man, she wanted to be prepared in case of a bioweapons attack. She decided to visit Marina Baranova, a well-known biological weapons expert who has studied the potential threats of tularemia to the U.S. for more information. This is what Dr. Baranova had to say. The impact of bioweapon tularemia on the United States is greatly understated. If tularemia were to be used as a bioweapon, it would be aerosolized and made transmissible through the air. In 1969, the World Health Organization estimated that an aerosol dispersal of 50 kilograms of virulent F. tularensis over a metropolitan area with 5 million people would result in 250,000 incapacitating casualties and 19,000 deaths. Illness would be expected to persist for several weeks, and relapses to occur during the ensuing weeks and months. Without treatment, the clinical course would progress to respiratory failure, shock, and even death. Tularemia is readily treatable, but only if recognized early. The chest X-ray pattern for tularemia is nondescript. The symptoms of tularemia are hard to detect from other common diseases, and not to mention that isolation and identification using routine laboratory procedures could take several weeks, but an outbreak can occur within 3 days. Mortality rates without antibiotics range from 30 to 60%. In a population where tularemia incidence is low, this bioweapon will be able to wreak havoc on the immune systems of many American residents. Tularemia will take many lives as well as many dollars. The CDC predicted that the economic impact of bioterrorism using aerosol tularemia is $5.4 billion for every 100,000 people exposed. The trickiness of this bacterial enemy is that it can survive for weeks at low temperatures, in water, moist soil, hay, straw, and decaying animal carcasses, and it could adapt to various environmental conditions. The bioweapon of tularemia can even be engineered to be antibiotically resistant. Already, plasmids have been successfully engineered to express resistance to streptomycin, chloramenocil, and tetracycline. Summer, you definitely have reasons for concern. Tularemia can wreak havoc on many residents in this country. Overwhelmed with concern, Summer decided to go see her professor, Dr. Miller, to get a better understanding of how tularemia has been used in the past and how likely it is to be used in the future. This is what Dr. Miller had to say.
The use of tularemia as a biological weapon has been around for the past 34 centuries, so the idea of using it as a biological weapon is completely rational and possible. Tularemia was in fact the first recorded case of a disease being used as a weapon. This occurred in the 14th century BC with the Hittite plague. The Hittite plague was an example of biological warfare because the two sides would send their sick people and cattle in the enemy's camp during battle and attempt to spread the disease to the enemy. Tularemia has been seen throughout history as a biological weapon. The latest example is during the Cold War, in which the US and the USSR researched the validity of using it as a biological weapon. And according to Dr. Alabik, it is very likely that it could be used as a biological weapon, given that USSR has used tularemia many times in the past, such as Stalingrad. Given today's US and Russia's tension, this may likely become a growing concern for the US.
Summer was convinced that the threat of tularemia being used as a biological warfare weapon was real. But what were public health officials doing to protect citizens like her in a case of tularemia outbreaks? She decided to see Dr. Bobby Babson, a representative of the public health system, to discuss this issue.
Good afternoon, Summer. I understand your concerns, and I can tell you a few things that the United States government is doing to reduce the risk of a tularemia outbreak. Currently, we have an LVS vaccine that seems to be the best preventable measure for tularemia. Unfortunately, this vaccine has not been released to the public yet, and we're working on completing the full genome sequence to develop a new vaccine that will hopefully be more reliable. We could also educate residents, such as yourself, to be informed of its existence and the possibilities of prevention. For example, it is important to keep your pets indoors to keep them away from wild rodents, as wild rodents are the carriers for tularemia. Also, if you happen to spot wild rodents, you should distance yourself from them as well. Improvements in public access to clean water are being used to not only fight tularemia, but also other waterborne and water transmissible diseases. So as I said, tularemia is a potential threat to the United States, but as a government, there are some precautions and preventative measures that we can take to help our population in case of an outbreak and to keep you safe.
Like any other college teenager, Summer decided to post her discoveries on her Facebook page. She realized that the best preventative measure to take is to inform her closest friends and family. Her post got attention of local news media and was asked to create a public health announcement to spread the news of this potential threat. This is what she had to say.
There are many different ways that normal citizens, just like myself, can protect themselves from an attack or even during an attack. One of the most common ways and the biggest threat when it comes to tularemia being used in an attack is through aerosol release. A lot of times, planes that are used for farming to spray crops will be flown over large cities to release the disease into the air and contaminate all who are there. If you ever see anything that appears odd in this manner, go indoors as quickly as possible and do not exit until you are sure that it is safe to do so. When handling wild animals, or even domestic animals in some cases, people should be very precautious. Gloves and protective wear should be worn at all times when dealing with wild animals, considering that they are a natural vector for tularemia. If there is ever any suspicion of a tularemia attack, contaminated pets must stay outside as well. Fur, materials from their paws, and possibly even ticks could be brought into the home, cause contamination, and end up deadly for all who live there. Anytime there's a possibility of an attack, stay indoors at all times. Turn off any air conditioning units and shut all doors and windows tightly. Never bring contaminated items into your home. Leave them outside. Tularemia biowarfare is not something that should be ignored. Citizens all around the world should be aware of the precautions and the measures that should be taken if there's ever an attack around them. We should also raise up our voices of concern so that the public health system could better prepare for an attack. Citizens should push for the LVS vaccine to become readily available. Considering the vaccine is effective and could help to save lives, it could be very beneficial in the long run. Although the public health system will fight in the case of an emergency outbreak, we as residents need to fear and prepare ourselves in case of the use of such a dangerous biological weapon.